Sorry, can we turn on your mic? Is your mic on? Can you say something again? It doesn't seem like it's capturing it on the Zoom. I'm sorry.
So how about
Yeah, switch mic.
here?
Yeah.
Is this better? Okay. Begin with a moment of silence and reflecting on the work that we're charged to do in this moment of this time of change, and also remembering the passing of Dale Morris, a very extraordinary public servant who served the city well. Moment of silence. Right, thank you. Do we have any members of anybody in the public sign up for public comment? Jasmine? No? Then we'll move on to approval of the minutes. They were circulated, minutes of March 13th. Are there any additions or corrections?
Move to approve.
I would like to ask Jasmine if you could attach the manager's written update to the minutes, as well as the memo of March 13th from the legal department regarding the DEI, H 3927. I'd like to have that as part of the record as well. Motion to accept the minutes have been made as with necessary adjustments. Any unreadiness? Not all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Abstentions? So ordered. Okay, co-chair, would you like to have any comments for us or observations?
Sure. Wanted to share that City Council and the mayor and actually a whole contingent of other folks from Charleston went up to Columbia on April 2nd to establish relationships, better relationships with our partners in the State House up there. Talk about issues that affect Charleston, specifically, particularly road funding, flooding, money for flooding solutions, and affordable housing. So there's a number of specific asks around affordable housing, especially. I thought that might be most of interest to this group. Some of those just mostly being flexibility in how we can use certain tax funds that are generally restricted for like promoting tourism now, or very specific city projects that we'd like to expand along the lines of what they did with the accommodations tax last year or the year before. So I think there's a lot of receptivity to doing exactly that. I don't know of any specific bills at the moment, but certainly a lot of will and general understanding up there that we're not the only city dealing with a housing crisis, but just how acute it is, and the changes that has sort of forced on the city in especially the last 10 years or so. We also just kind of generally talked about liquor liability reform, tort reform. I'm not sure how much of interest that would be to this this group, except that I think the hospitality industry in this city is certainly a major employer of in the city, but particularly lower income African American individuals, and so we're really at risk of losing a lot of that industry. I don't know how much anybody's followed that, It's pretty in the weeds debate really, um, with regard to liquor liability rates, putting some of these small employers out of business. But I mean, this is a path to upward mobility for a lot of people. There's plenty of restaurant owners in town who started working in a kitchen, working behind a bar, and have worked their way up to own their own business. And this is really threatening their livelihood and the livelihoods of their employees. So worth I think mentioning. The other thing that didn't really get into all that much up there, but while we were eating lunch, some of the House members had to sprint back over to the State House to go debate for some crazy number of hours on this DEI bill. It was completely rewritten. So thanks to the folks who came and presented to us a month ago, but unfortunately that information didn't end up being all that relevant to what ended up in the bill. It's still fairly broad, although I think they limited some of the harshest impacts. They changed the definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion to be all sorts of things, but those things have to specifically violate anti-discrimination laws. So, for example, the provision that would apply to Hark says basically that the city can't maintain offices that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. In theory, that might include this group, but under the new definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I don't think we're violating any anti-discrimination laws. So I think there's certainly a strong argument that we actually wouldn't violate it. Now that's a kind of technical argument that I don't know if the folks charged with regulating or enforcing this bill would agree with. So we'll have to see how that works out if it does pass. But I will say that it didn't seem like the Senate was in a real rush to take it up. So we'll see. I'd expect it to keep moving along. Probably come back next session if it doesn't pass this one. So just something to keep our eye on there. And in other news, the Senate has also, or some senators, fairly as long tenured, pretty powerful senators introduced a bill that expands the Heritage Act. That I don't know if they intend to do what they're doing with that, because that's crazy broad language that in theory could prevent even dealing with monuments that have already been taken down in the past. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. That hasn't gotten a lot of movement. It was introduced about halfway through the session, so I don't, could have just been for headlines. I don't know how much momentum there really is behind that, but something else we'll keep our eye on.
Anything else on the action at the city council meeting you'd like to share with us?
Somebody might be building a parking garage right off King Street. The police department is not a unanimous vote, but will be ending the Citizens Police Advisory Committee or Commission, CPAC as we generally know it, and the chief will be forming a new liaison group that he explained is meant to sort of work better in concert with the police department in making sure that it's communicating with every constituency in the city. Same goal, I suppose, as CPAC, in that it's meant to it's meant to distribute information and make sure that there are clear lines of communication with the community. I think it's different in CPAC in that, my understanding, CPAC took on um, a bit of a oversight sort of responsibility. Um, and so this will be different in that regard. So, we heard from the chief at the meeting the other night. I was in favor of keeping CPAC, but that's, yeah, at the end of the day, whatever the entity is called, it just needs to work to promote transparency and closer ties with the community, so that nobody ever gets worried about what's going to happen if they report a crime, right? That's I think the great fear of alienating the community and separating them from the police is that we'll be less than able to solve crime and prevent crime. So certainly I'll be keeping an eye on that. You know, CPD released its annual report with some excellent statistics about drop in crime, as well as drop in fatal collisions, which I know has been a real emphasis over my term on city council, and hadn't seen a whole lot of movement until the last year. Now those trends sort of mirror national trends. It's kind of hard to make like real time determinations with what's going on with crime data, but certainly I think nobody's gonna be upset about a significant drop in crime or fatal motor vehicle collisions. Um, so some good stuff there, some things to keep our eye on, make sure things keep running as well as they possibly can over at CPD. And I believe that is all I have.
Okay.
Can-
Ron,
can-
great.
Thank you, Stephen. It was a very meaty update on what the city council has been up to. So can I just circle back to when you were with the state delegation at the legislature, you mentioned that the topics were primarily, in addition to the liquor liability and talking a little bit about the anti-DEI, but in terms of what the city is hoping to accomplish at the state level, you said housing, roads, and stormwater mitigation. So is that leading to asking the legislature to expand the uses for the sales tax, or has that been decided, or what do you know about the sales tax?
So we were only seeking to expand how we use that stuff for affordable housing purposes. I think we were, just straight up asking for money with regard to flooding solutions and traffic. Unfortunately, Carol, you're familiar, but everybody else, the way traffic or the way money flows in the city or in the state, generally kind of cuts out the city to a large extent, no matter how much we drive. A lot of the money that ends up in Charleston County's coffers. But that's why we have to have a collaborative relationship with the county, with the state. We're just it's so expensive to build here, is the thing. I mean, so road money that they give to Greenville, great. We might need a little bit bigger of a portion of that budget, and a little bit more TLC from SCDOT to make sure that we can build in our extremely low-lying wet environment. And I think the will is there. I would love to see more money to go ahead and start planning out an extension of the Low Country, the LCRT, Low Country
Rapid
Rapid
transit.
Transit.
Bus rapid.
I always get confused on that because Low Country is one word. But I would love to start seeing that expanded out to West Ashley. There's some great stuff. Depending on who you ask, I suppose that will be coming online. But with all the negatives, we will have some pretty significant affordable housing out here, with the Long Savannah development and with some some new units that the city authorized, or the city's doing, and so those folks, well, it's workforce housing, right? So they're kind of solidly middle class. It's still going to put more cars on the road. It's going to put a strain. Some number of those people, are going to be working downtown, and so we want to make sure that when we're putting people in workforce housing, that we are not, at the same time choking them off from opportunities that they, sort of think of, being in somewhat close proximity to downtown. So a lot of ways that infrastructure money could be spent, and a lot of asks. But so then it would just be, once we can convince them to give us the money, maybe we could be pretty discerning about how that money is allocated.
Right. Okay, so yeah, not to belabor it, but it sounds like the expansion of the uses for the potential 2026 sales tax referendum then wasn't on your plate when you went there. So I think, we've heard the mayor say that he feels pretty confident that the legislature will allow the county to expand the uses when they put that sales tax extension referendum in front of the citizens in 2026. So we'll just think that's to be continued.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. No, you're right. The mayor is specifically asking for that, but I have very little doubt that would be, or that the legislator wouldn't act on that to allow us to have that particular flexibility, with regard to some of the other pots of money that are, not.
They're currently not enabled in the current
Right.
way of spending tax or sales
Yeah.
tax.
That's right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a couple other things that noted at recent council meetings. The mayor stated the city message, in case you had not had the opportunity to take a look at that, outlines priorities that he said, and highlighted successes, amongst them the drop in crime in the city, the increased DUI, driver under influence enforcement, and safer traffic. We had asked, Adrian reached out to the department and asked them to come to a meeting so we can have a conversation about that with the creation of the new Chiefs Liaison Committee, which, by the way, just for information purposes, the regulations or the guidelines that City Council adopted provided for the old CPAC to have review and advice around operational policies and complaints, and not a quote unquote review kind of function, or a oversight function. This particular piece of set of guidelines say very specifically that the new group will not have any oversight. So it's an attempt to clarify what the expectations are of that group. The City Council, the mayor issued a proclamation on this month is Fair Housing Month, which reminded me that we were supposed to revisit the Urban League about the volume of fair housing activity. So that's a request we're going to make of Adrian to collect data in terms of what volume of complaints that they're receiving in that regard. The council also approved a contract for moving the Low Line project forward. And there was also a request by Ed Jones for the city to put forward some money to support a recreation program to offset the fact that the Board of Education has indicated that it will not be doing recreation programs. And Councilman Mitchell, in consultation with Councilwoman Parker, indicated that will be coming before the Recreation Committee. Mr. Jones's comment about why this was important: in the absence of recreational activity, you could expect young people to get in trouble during the course. So that seemed to be a good response. And one of our areas is youth development, and also our conversation about education. What the Board of Education is able to do or not able to do can have an impact on the city.
So is that termed to be a money-saving decision about
I don't know what
CCSD?
The rationale for CCSD reduction in recreation, and Mr. Jones presented the information as a matter of fact.
Can you remind us who's Mr. Jones?
Ed Jones has run the summer recreation program. He's an employee of the city, but on a volunteer basis, he runs recreation programs, a basketball league specifically, and he was looking for recreation, the city support for that activity this summer expansion.
Could I add in, he happens to be a close friend of mine going back more years than I would care to say. But beyond that, he and other city employees for a long time on the east side have been, well, they partner with us every month on a major fresh food distribution in the area. They also have the summer camp program, after school programs. These are not, to my knowledge, funded by the city, but they use city facilities, and I cannot say enough, having spent a lot of time in that community and with Mr. Jones, about how critical those after school programs and summer programs are. There are times where kids have nothing to do and parents are both at work for long periods of time, and it is the Mr. Joneses of the world and those that make use of these city facilities that keep kids from getting into all kinds of trouble or, having trouble brought to them. And so I hope that the city can invest more in programs like that, and community members and leaders like that, and encourage the use of their facilities for programs like that, because ultimately, to Mr. Jones's point, these mentors and these leaders are the people that are setting kids on the right path and keeping them out of really bad situations. And so I have a feeling that if more was invested in programs like this, there would less need to be invested in public safety and in addressing problems once kids are grown up and they some of them have gone down the wrong path.
Thank you.
Just to finish Brandon's excellent suggestion, I as I recall, and I haven't looked at it recently, but I think using the city's facilities for the exact purposes you're talking about, enhancing recreation opportunities for kids who require that by their own, set of life circumstances, as we studied for a year and a half, that was one of the more detailed recommendations that the CIRC report came forward with. And I don't know if they still do it on a regular basis, but it used to be that the city would host, like similar to the Small Business Expo, they would host an opportunity for people who are potential volunteers to come out and see all of the groups that provide that sort of enhancement, supplemental, opportunities to disadvantaged kids. So I hope they still do that. That could be something we also look into, and it would be good to have a presentation about that.
Stephen, Your hand's up.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that Mr. Jones is looking for private sponsors as well. So if you know anybody who has a business, wants to do a little bit of advertising, you could pay a certain amount and get their business name on the uniform. But it was pretty reasonable sponsorship levels, really. So if you know anybody who might be interested in that sort of advertising, let them know, and I can find and distribute that information. But the basketball league is the Philip Simmons Summer Basketball League, they call it.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, Stephen, if you could, copy that information and send it to the commissioners so we could be of assistance. We also need to monitor, and again, Councilwoman Parker, who chairs the Recreation Committee, and Councilman Mitchell, who is a council person for the East Ward, will seem to be on it, but it's something for us to monitor at least. Okay. And not at the last council meeting, but at the previous council meeting, Commissioner Alvin Johnson was appointed to the Charleston Housing Authority. Right. So that's another piece of information for us. Okay.
And just real quick, Jerry, it's at the Johnson household, it's another non-revenue. Perspective. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to jumping in.
And to that end, the Housing Authority is more than willing and waiting to be invited to make a presentation about the projects that they know are already in the works. So I think
But ahead her report that included several items of information. The one question I had for her, which was the item, here it is. Thank you. In her report, she again asked for input from the other commissioners who've not submitted anything in writing as of yet. That we're not doing it. No, writing is, we're done with the written input. So you disregard that. She noted that the community development survey that's required by HUD is in process, and there's no information available, no data yet available from that, but hopefully at the next meeting we'll have something. The Small Business Expo, she did not have an update. The number of the commissioners did attend. Was an excellent event. And Carol or Tom, you have anything you want to add to that?
I have to bring the card of the gentleman I talked to. It was right after, right, not long after the bill, the 2937 anti-DEI bill had been changed significantly to basically drop a lot of the regulations that were going to control anyone who received state funding and then passed it forward through any sort of contract. The contractors themselves and their subcontractors were to be required to sign statements that pledged that they were not offering any sort of, equity training or recruiting best practices. So for a New York minute, that whole section was taken out of the bill, and that's when I went around and talked to a couple of people. So I will send a copy. There's a state, I don't, they're not an agency, but they're similar to the Human Affairs advisory group that operates at the state level for small business affirmative action.
Okay. The, in Air Criminal Justice, she had attached the 2024 annual report from the police department and the 2024 Charleston Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Interesting kind of correlation. The chief talks about increased DUI enforcement, and the criminal justice report shows that DUI has become the number one charge seen in the courts. So the question for me, being an old police guy, is whether or not that's a regional strategy. You know, is it coordinated amongst the departments? Is that an artifact of that? But that's the kind of thing that we can chat with the police department when they come and chat with us.
Good.
The offset of that was that the increase in DUI enforcement, we believe, had some impact on the number of fatalities and crashes. So again, that's an interesting piece. On the environment, she noted that Mika Gaston has been appointed, taking over as the city's director of sustainability. Adrian and I had a conversation generally about the Office of Policy in the mayor's office. I noted on city council agendas, items seem to be able to go right from the policy office, right, to the city council agenda, and not necessarily through committees. And as we think about activity in the future, that might be a vehicle or an approach in terms of using the relationship with the policy office, which we report up through as a way of getting things directly, as opposed to having to go through council. But I think that's one of the topics I think we should talk with the mayor about in terms of reauthorization and protocol. She also shared a Tri-County Shape annual report, and I wish she was here so she could give us a little bit of insight in terms of the relationship of what that report shows in our work. And she mentions the state of the city message. I circulated by email late today a draft set of initiatives that Adrian had put forward previously, and I wanted, we had never talked about it at all, and given her any feedback. When I had the opportunity to speak with the mayor after our last meeting, when we were suggesting we're going to go to city council and ask them for a resolution opposing 3927, and folks said, no, let's don't do that because that put spotlight on us in a moment. And I spoke with him, and he indicated that yes, he wanted to have conversation about the future of Hart. And one of the things he commented was that Adrian had some ideas, and having this to suggest some of the ideas that might be in the plate. Don't want to belabor conversation. Anybody have any quick questions or observations about any of these bullet points, 1 through 4?
Well, as it stands right now, this is her work plan.
This is a draft set of initiatives. We in conversation have said, you know, what is the office doing? Help us understand what you perceive the Office of Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation.
Right. Okay.
So that we could better understand the balance between the work of the commission and what the office would do.
But,
This is what this
but
is.
okay, knowing it's the office, who is Adrian, essentially, reporting through the city's policy director, or whatever his official title is, I'm sorry, to the mayor. So have they approved her plan, or is this something she still has to get?
My interpretation of the mayor's comments is that consideration of this and discussion about the future of the commission are kind of tie-barred and they're just ideas. Nothing's been necessarily signed off on, but that's a question that we can clarify. Okay. With that being said, the next thing, Stephen and I had a conversation about moving to report and reauthorization. Based on my conversation with the mayor, when I asked him who should we be talking about in terms of understanding what his priorities were and how he saw us moving forward, he said it was him that we should talk to. And in consultation with Stephen, since 5 of us are a quorum, I'm going to ask Bonnie and Brandon to join with Stephen and I. We'll try and get a meeting scheduled with the mayor in the next 2 weeks to kind of talk through what's on his mind in terms of reauthorization. Stephen, did it do damage to that conversation?
I think you nailed it.
Okay. All right.
And then the expectation is that depending on what comes out of that mayor's conversation, there will be some vote by the council, or we're just gonna
So I
make
mean,
a
I
report
think,
in
I
May,
think
or-
there is a tie bar between what does or does not happen with the state legislation based on the memo that we received from legal. The timing, it appears that the legislature finishes like the second week in May, right? So that our conversation or action, the earliest possible action might be the second meeting in May of city council. So I'm hoping that we have, it may be a question of us coming back, maybe needing to call a special meeting, right, to give feedback to the commissioners in terms of what we're hearing before moving forward.
And based on what Stephen told us earlier, the memo that we got was based on the very first version, which was the most directive and in my opinion, punishing to communities like ours. So what I think we heard you say earlier, that the new version that went through the House is a little less definitive in terms of what is DEI and the programs that would be supportive of
Yeah, I mean that was my reading. Now,
discrimination, anti-discrimination.
yeah, now take with a grain of salt that is my personal legal opinion, not the legal opinion of the city, which
So it still would be-
very well could be different things. But I mean, my reading is that in order to qualify as quote diversity, equity, and inclusion, it has to run afoul of some anti-discrimination law. Now, the preamble to the bill talks about the letter and the spirit of the law, of anti-discrimination laws. I mean, that I can't imagine a harder standard to try to apply than what one member of the legislature, a bare majority of the legislature, thinks the spirit of a law means. So have to be paying attention, I guess, pretty closely to cases coming out of the federal courts interpreting federal anti-discrimination statutes, because they're generally applied the same way, interpreted the same way. So I mean, there's certainly opinions about anti-discrimination laws with regard to colleges, that are well, they're both statutory decisions and constitutional decisions, that I think could make that apply pretty broadly. And so I'd be more comfortable getting the city's legal opinion on it first, before answering definitively. But still, I mean, I think it's clear enough that as long as we're not, directly running afoul of some of some federal law or directly doing something that a Supreme Court case said don't do, it'd be pretty hard to make an argument that we were in violation of those things. Now, interestingly, the Supreme Court has interpreted Section 7, Title 7 of the civil rights law to include like trans people in under the definition of sex-based discrimination. I'd have to guess that the legislature does not have that particular interpretation in mind when they wrote this bill. But that's, just further evidence of how hard it would be to apply the standard that they've laid out. And also the preamble to the bill isn't really like enforceable law, although I guess a court could look at it when they're considering how to interpret it.
But bottom line, we'd have to have some new letter from the general counsel's office.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
fairly
The city.
speculative. It was fairly
Right.
speculative in terms of what was in the bill at
Right.
that point. What it appeared to be, because we asked based on what had been introduced, so that's what they responded.
Right.
And
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that memo is a bit out of date at this point.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I would just add that the bill has only passed the House,
Right.
and we have really just a couple weeks of action left in the entire General Assembly. And if it did get rushed somehow through the committee process, which I don't anticipate that's going to happen on the Senate side before the end of the close, the break, or before the break starts, it could look completely different. And they could have to reconcile the bills. And so we even with the House amendments, we don't really know what that bill looks like.
Yeah, no, that would be premature to try to make a general counsel statement
Exactly.
with just the
Exactly.
House version.
Okay. Thank you. So the way in which we proceed, we'll schedule a meeting with the mayor in our subcommittee. If necessary, can be a conversation about what the recommendations look like and what the plan of action toward action from the city council when that will occur.
So will he have had our report by then?
No. We're having a conversation, be part of all of the dynamic created by what's going on at the federal level and at the state levels, the conversations about what you want to do proactively, all right, is more important than reactively in this setting. So
Yeah,
we
sorry, you just mentioned the
we
recommendations.
certainly will file something indicating, that we've met and complied with the requirements and based on what my opinion, based on the path forward that the mayor is comfortable with, then we as a body can decide what information we want to provide in a more generally to the public in terms of, a report about the 3-year kind of thing. So it's the report, the commentary and the decision are linked, but not necessarily to our board, in my opinion. So I'd like to move on to the discussion about potential presentations. We've kind of backed up in terms of a number of potential things that we want to talk about. Stephen has been in consultation and pursuing the possibility of a presentation from the developers at Union Pier to talk about what it is that they have in mind. In addition, as Commissioner, the two commissioners on the Housing Authority have indicated, the Housing Authority interest in our interest in hearing, understanding what they're doing with the RAD program, because it touches both environmental issues as well as affordable housing issues and accessibility kinds of questions. Police Department's annual report and the new chief's liaison activity and the community development survey, which is establishing data in terms of concerns about affordable housing, homelessness, and other public services. So those are at least 4 or 5 things that we could have presentations on. And my sense of what priority would you want to give?
Could we add a couple to the list? Is that helpful?
Yeah,
Yeah, let's get some more.
Because in all seriousness, I know that the Charleston County Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee has an community engagement leadership team that they've just started convening. And I know because somehow I got roped into being part of this effort as well. But they would like very much to connect with the city and HARC because their missions are somewhat aligned in terms of what we're promoting. And then the other suggestion I would make, and this is not urgent or anything, but we have this Charleston Interreligious Council that I'm sure would love to talk about the interfaith community just in support of this number 3 part of the proposal here about One Charleston and, maintaining lines of communication with different stakeholders. But yeah, so there's some more for your list.
Yeah. So, and before Tom beats up on me, right, the unhoused proposal, rapid housing and other, and the services remains on the list in terms of updating and follow-up.
Maybe we should have a whole day.
I've talked to some of the folks that were here with us from the housing group, and long story short, they've said that the unhoused and people, it's a bigger problem now than it was 6 months ago or so when they the homeless situation is a lot worse now than it was even 6 months ago.
Wow, absolutely.
and
Yeah.
it's been a while since we were in the presence of SCASID and the, Black business community. So I think we should have a reconnection there too.
Okay. All right. Again, if we were giving priority to who we want to talk to next month,
Union Pier.
Union Pier for you.
Mm-hmm.
So Stephen, I'll share what you said to me earlier, that they are not far enough along where they would have proposal or content to present, but we were looking for hearing from us what our ideas were. Just in terms of, right, so we would.
Yeah, that's right. Now when I sat down with, kind of the head planner on the project, who's, done some other great stuff around town, I have absolute confidence that he's gonna, really come up with something great over there. They were very interested in, telling the story of that part of town. Certainly we've talked about before, even suggested to city council, that, there's a very rich history of the, involving the contributions of Black Charlestonians at that, in the Union Pier area. And so that's, one thing they're considering is, honoring the mosquito fleet there. But, any other ideas? I mean, I know, they're very interested in hearing them. They want, I mean, it's going to be a brand new neighborhood for the city, right? I mean, it's going to change the face of downtown, in a way that nobody's really had the opportunity to do in probably generations. So, they want it to fit into the fabric of the city. And, one, I think, very important way to do that is making sure that it's telling the full story, especially given that it's going to be on a pathway that you can, walk right down the waterfront from the International African American Museum. And so would sort of dovetail with the mission of that museum.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree that the contributions of the African-American community in that whole part of our industry basically need to be reestablished in people's understanding of our history. But I think we'd gotten way beyond just honoring the contributions of the Mosquito Fleet and the Black Commerce districts that they had basically engendered, in their era and carried on into the workforce and all of that. So maybe that would be a good reason to reconnect with SCASID and have that as a combined sit down.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't let go of the Renaissance Business
no.
District or the Mosquito Fleet Commerce District or whatever we want to officially name it at the end of the day. I ended up seeing Michael Harper, that's his name, right? Who is one of the planners for the BMOC, the Navarro company that's working on Union Pier. And I mentioned to him that we were talking about, whenever it's appropriate, coming back to the planning group and inserting our ideas about establishing an active, live, ongoing commerce district. And he said, that's fabulous. They hadn't thought about it to that extent. So I think we should
Yeah, so I think
take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think there's some homework that needs to be done that you point to in terms of reconnecting with SCAD and the people who've been developing that
Right.
concept, so
Yeah.
we understand what the questions are.
Yeah.
in the-
We don't want a museum anymore. We
Yeah.
want an active, thriving
So-
business community.
So to move this forward just a little bit, your suggestion that the criminal justice reform group
Criminal
And-
Justice Coordinating Committee.
coordinating committee. Thank you. And if we can get them and the police to come, that would be a public safety conversation. All right, and, as the, special commission report points out, that public safety is not just, the question of what the policing component, but it is also, what happens with the courts. And this gives us an opportunity to align that. So, I would push that as perhaps.
It also gets into the kids and the activities after school, which we we're talking about earlier. I mean, all this stuff comes together.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to know more about Union Pier, but I think it may be premature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, and Commissioner Jackson from the Housing Authority RAD project
I mean, hopefully they're gonna be, making progress on the official land use entitlements process
planning
that
process,
goes through city, some public forums at some point in time in terms of Board of Architectural Review and Planning Commission and things like that, but.
And because we often have trouble scheduling folks, why don't we have the public safety and the housing as what we want up for next time? In
I
addition,
think that's too much. Both
I'm
those
I'm
times?
saying.
Oh,
go-
one or
we'll-
the other.
We'll try
One
and
or
get
the
them
other.
scheduled to make sure we
One or
have
the
one of
other.
them.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, open discussion. Anything folks want to raise?
I'll just make a quick comment. I know there've been some big things done in the transportation issue because I've seen the emails, but I haven't got a chance to get into them. But I know we talked about the relationship between housing and transportation, both unhoused and for workers and all that. And I think there's been progress on the Low Country Rapid Transit or something. I just hadn't gotten back with the folks who are on top of that. But I've seen some headlines and I'm cautiously optimistic, and I'll just stop there.
And sort of along the same lines, just in terms of, I guess, diversifying our ways to get around the area. County Council, this one's near and dear to my heart because it's right in my area, but County Council just added a bike lane back into the segment A of the Main Street project or Main Road project. And that is massive because it's going to connect bike paths that run out by my area. So along Bees Ferry, along 61, out, to what eventually will be a bike path out to New County and City Parks off Bear Swamp Road, all back through, Long Savannah will, connect down Main Road, to the Greenway and out to Johns Island. Which, for all the wonderful things about the Ashley River crossing that I totally support, it's been tough to explain to my constituents that we won't be able to use it, because we are not connected to the Greenway, unless you want to take some circuitous routes that include places that do not have dedicated bike lanes and are fairly dangerous. So this is a huge win. Who's not here, but just big appreciation to Charleston Moves for pushing for this. And if you talk to your county council member, if you see him around, thank him for keeping that sort of stuff in mind, because that had gotten dropped from the project at one point, which was a real tough pill to swallow. So glad to see that their dedication to multimodal transportation won the day.
And the connectivity actually starts in Maryville, Ashleyville, the bikeway, right? It starts at their part of the river and then
Yep.
runs through Maryville, Ashleyville, over to Sycamore, and then over to the Greenway. So that whole trail system will be connected.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. There's a lot more connectivity in inner West Ashley. Just
But it goes to the outer West Ashley. That's the point. They'll be able to go all the way to Johns Island, starting on the bikeway.
oh yeah. Well, eventually when it all ties in, you'll be able to go, all the way downtown on the Ashley River crossing. But yeah, you'll be able to connect from the Greenway to the bikeway, get all sorts of places. So, I'm excited to see this. I think it induced demand for additional ways to get around. So if we can get around to serious planning about getting public transportation out here, we'll really be in business. I was just looking at some meeting minutes from when they approved Long Savannah in 2015, and people were saying, man, we really need to get around to a planning effort then. So it's time to move forward on all these things.
Brandon?
Well, I'm suddenly guilty for not riding my bike here.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share that on the 23rd, that's a Wednesday evening, we're hosting our annual Yom HaShoah Holocaust commemoration. And it's going to be this year at Capers Hall at the Citadel. Registration is required, so give me a shout if you're interested in attending. It's open to everybody. And I have a note here that we've just settled on April 28th for Food and Faith. It's an annual program between Muslim and Jewish communities, Jewish and Muslim food, and there'll be discussion about religious dietary laws and cultural commonalities, and it's always a good time. That's April the 28th at 6:30 at Arnold Hall at the College of Charleston. And May is Jewish American Heritage Month. So I think we're working on a proclamation with the city on that. But yeah, for good and welfare, that's some of the things going on that are coming up.
Brent and I were talking earlier in the day. There's discussion about trying again to reboot the hate crime bill in the legislature before the end of the session.
The League of Women Voters sent around an invitation today that they're hosting a advocacy for the hate crime forum on April 24th at 6:30 by Zoom, and Brandon is the featured leader of the conversation. So you can sign up through the League of Women.
If anybody wants to volunteer to take my place, I got a lot on my plate. But yeah, that Jerry, they are, as I understand it, in the House, they're whipping votes and trying to see if they can recall hate crimes to the floor by unanimous consent. I don't know how optimistic I would be that we can get unanimous consent for anything in the state House. But they're trying. And then last week or earlier this week, it's been a long week. The Senate, a judiciary subcommittee, passed along with a favorable report, a hate crime bill, authored by Senator Margie Bright Matthews.
Great.
And it was with bipartisan support. So I don't know, there's some discussion about whether there has been some discussion, behind closed doors about this bill moving forward, but for whatever it's worth, there's a little flare happening here at the end of session where people are trying again to make it especially illegal to harm people because of their immutable characteristics. So we remain one of 2 states in the country without this kind of legislation, and
Yeah.
it would be great if we were not the last state.
Yeah. So, again, if any of you have, events, that speak to, human relations development, intergroup relations, please, share them with Adrian so we can try and generate a calendar. I know, for example, the Ancestry Burial Ground,
Yeah.
project will, on May 4th, be doing a commemoration, their annual commemoration, but also they've collected soil from burial grounds where African descended people have been buried, and they'll be doing a ceremony associated with that. So Charleston is full of those kinds of activities. People don't necessarily participate in them because they don't know about them.
Right.
And I would hope that one of the things that we can do, at least amongst the commissioners, all right, is to share that information more broadly.
So what time of the day is that on the 4th?
On the 4th, that's a Sunday, so it'll probably be around 2 or 3, but I'll get the invitation. to you.
Okay.
All right?
Is this related to the folks that were exhumed when the Gilliard was
Yes,
being
yes,
expanded?
Yes,
Yeah.
this is
Amazing.
this is a
Yeah.
continuation of the project, and the actual memorial is close to being ready. They've had to relocate the site just a little bit. It's still on the
Gilliard.
on the Ancestry site, it's just slightly shifted.
That was such an incredible event when they had the march and I think Dr. O
Yeah,
was
that was
leading
one
up.
of his last things.
Yeah, it was an incredible program, and what a story.
So, anything else to come before us? Motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. We'll stand adjourned. Thank you.